So the creative block I ran into a week and a half ago did not go away since then. In fact, it has spread even to a different project that I started working on in an attempt to combat it, and as I'm realizing now, in a degree to writing a script for this devlog as well. But before I start rambling about that, let me put in here a piece of a recording that I cut out of the last week's devlog, because it was already really long without it. A summary of significant changes I made to the weapons, and justifications of these changes from a game design perspective. And before that, I would ask you to please tell me in the comments what it is that you would like to see from these devlogs going forward. I have gained a few subscribers since I started uploading them, so clearly someone here cares about them, and I quite frankly still haven't figured out what exactly I'm trying to do with them after a month, so I could use a suggestion or two. Would you rather have a short overview of the progress made or a more detailed one? Should I go more into details, or talk more about game design concepts, or about the story? But with that out of the way, weapons. You've been introduced to gilded weapons and their equivalents in the All About Anna devlog, but they aren't the only new thing. There are also new bows. All bows were for starters given a base range of 2 to 3, the same as the longbow in vanilla, to address the fact that in vanilla, bows really don't have a viable niche. The shortbow is the one exception, remaining 2-range exclusive and instead gaining the Canto Plus skill, just like knives being meant for hit and run tactics. But with the normal bow range extended, the longbow range had to be changed too, and it was changed to 4 to 6, making it almost like a portable ballista. And 2 more bows with that range were added. A warbow, being the equivalent of a steel weapon to longbow's iron, and a great bow, with stats of a silver tier weapon, as well as an additional effectiveness against armored units. The next weapons to face changes were the ones commonly considered to be the best weapons in the GBA era, the hand axe and the javelin. There were many ways in which I considered nerfing them, such as making them less accurate, unable to double or crit, give them less durability while maintaining their price, but what I eventually settled on was what I would consider to be a more elegant solution. Making javelins and hand axes, as well as hatchets and short spears, 2-range exclusive, no longer usable in melee, since the biggest issue with them is the fact that they were by far the most versatile of the weapons, and allowed you to counter everyone who tried attacking you on the enemy turn. Spears and tomahawks kept their 1 to 2 range, as they are far more scarce and therefore cannot be completely relied upon. And I'm not just rebalancing and adding new weapons, because I also removed all the Wyrmslayers, the weapons which had effectiveness against wyverns and dragons, since enemies won't have many of either, while for the most part the player's only flying units will be wyverns, due to Pegasi being more mythical creatures in the setting I've created. But the most affected weapon category was the anima magic, which I reworked completely, wanting to make it more interesting, since it is the weapon type used by the main character. And have you seen how many love swords get in the vanilla game? There are more swords alone than tomes of all 3 types of magic combined. So what I've done is made 3 tomes each for fire and thunder, to serve as equivalents to iron, steel, and then silver and killer weapons, with fire tomes having a range of 1 and more might, while thunder tomes have a range of 2 and higher crit. In both cases, the silver equivalent does offer the 1 to 2 range. Then there is the wind tome, which also has 1 to 2 range, but at the cost of an extremely low might. Wind magic also comes with tomes of dusk wind, which has doubled weapon triangle effectiveness, making it even better against light magic, and Dawn Wind, which works like a river weapon, being weak against light, but effective against dark magic. Ice magic is no longer just Fimbulvetter, as it was also given 2 weaker but easier to obtain tomes. And to set it apart from the other subtypes of anima magic, the special property of ice spells is that they target defense instead of resistance, which is technically a nice bit of versatility, but most enemies you face will have higher defense than resistance, so I hope this can be actually considered a nerf. Then there are siege tomes, with bolting being joined by Volcano and Hurricane. Volcano being the hard-hitting one, bolting having a higher crit chance, and Hurricane having a range of 3 to 15 instead of 3 to 10 normally used by siege tomes. Finally, there are the pre-RF tomes for Ilma, And yes, tomes. In Chapter 1 you get a chance to select 1 out of 4 as your PRF weapon. Blaze, which with its Brave property is able to hit enemies up to 4 times in one cast, dealing heavy damage to ones with low resistance. Tempest, which has a unique 1-3 range, allowing for attacking from safe distance on pretty much anyone. Gale, which fittingly has the Gale Force skill, giving you an extra turn each time you kill an enemy. And Chill, which is great against targets with high resistance, because it's basically just an anima version of the Luna Tome, meaning that it has a base might of 0, but also treats the target's resistance as if it was 0. And even with all these additions, the game still has more swords than anima tomes. But anima isn't the only type of magic that got some attention, even if it did receive the lion's share of it. Dark and Light were only given 2 new tomes each. Solstice and Abyss are just river weapons, so that Magic 2 has a full triangle of those. Then Stygian is the dark magic version of the Devil Axe, an extremely powerful tome that has a chance to backfire and deal damage to you instead of the target. And Radiance is an A-rank tome with the same might as Lightning, the weakest of light tomes, but also with the property that the attacks made with it cannot be countered. Since then I also added the legendary armaments, or well, designed them. They aren't yet implemented into the game because I'm not 100% sure about them, with a single exception. Ilma, being the main character, will of course have a personal legendary weapon, and being a mage-based class, her legendary weapon will of course be an anima tome. And since she is a goddess, what better anima spell could there be than the Fire of Creation, the very flame from which the planet itself emerged? What other spell could I possibly give her but Supernova? And what animation could be more fitting than one where a torrent of fire gathers before bathing everything in towering flames? And, while we're on the topic of animations, what better animation could there be for a legendary tome of light magic than one where you call down the holy judgment of the heavens in the form of a laser-guided orbital strike? Yes, I am absolutely reusing the animation of Aureola from Fire Emblem 7, because that is the single greatest spell animation in all of Fire Emblem, and I will not be convinced otherwise. And to pair up with the Radiant Tome, there is a Radiant Sword, the Shadow Killer. And yes, I took the name of the Fire Emblem 8 monster effective sword, and yes, it's for a reason, but it's a reason I don't want to spoil right now. And those will be the legendary weapons in this hack: an Anima Tome, a Light Tome, and a Sword. Or is it an Anima Tome, a staff, and a lance? Or an Anima Tome, a bow, and an axe? Or 3 different tomes? Because yes, you will get 3 legendary weapons in this game, but what they will be will depend on what happens in earlier chapters. Now, I mentioned in the description of the All About Anna devlog that my motivation works like a sharp. If a project stops moving forward, it dies. And yeah, it's dead. Very dead. I've managed to do some work on that other project, but it is equally slow going. And for Divine Dream itself, I ended up employing a frog method instead. That is, jumping back and forth across the design document and making progress in small bits, working on whatever gives me an idea when rereading. And while this method does work, in all honesty, the legendary weapons are the only addition notable enough to be worth talking about. I did not spend this last week all that well, and the worst part is, despite in theory spending much more time recovering, I really don't feel any more eager to jump back into it this week, but I will try. Maybe it will take the frog method to get anything done, maybe I'll manage to perform necromancy on the shark. Either way, I'll be back to report on that next week. Until then, farewell.